The young wide receivers continue to step up for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll explain why on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. We are wrapping up the Dallas Cowboys minicamp. I don't believe they have practice on Thursday. If they do, it's just
they're doing a meeting today. Yeah,
great.
So it's not a real practice. Yeah.
This was about the least competitive minicamp that the Dallas Cowboys have ever had, and it's probably because Mike McCarthy has gotten fined the last couple of years for being a little bit too aggressive in some of the practices. But we're going to break down the biggest notes from minicamp, including Jalen Brooks and Jalen Tolbert, the two Jalens for the Dallas Cowboys, continue to step up in practice. Landon, what is your read on the young receivers here?
Yeah, I mean, despite you mentioned it, you said that it's the least competitive practice, but I think it's, specifically in the physical aspect of the hands-on sort of situations, because it sounds like it was a rather competitive practice for the guys on the perimeter. And McCarthy kind of continually has mentioned that he thought that the guys on the perimeter have had a really great offseason and that the Dak himself also had a really great offseason. So, but again, we kind of return to this drumbeat that we've been hearing, right? And with Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Brooks constantly, kind of impressing coaches, showing off the ability to kind of make plays. And this is sort of the unexpected, or I guess the silver lining rather to missing CeeDee Lamb in these OTAs and minicamp practices, right? Is that you get more opportunities for guys like Tolbert and Brooks and Flournoy. I'll say his name right someday.
Yeah, we'll get it. Ryan. It's Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, like, to get all those guys opportunities, more reps with the higher end guys, with Dak, with Trey Lance. And just to kind of get them more comfortable, especially for guys like Brooks and Tolbert, who, you're expecting to kind of take a step and potentially get some serious snaps this season as in the offense, not just as part of a special team. So this is obviously great news because the Cowboys were reliant on these kind of younger players, obviously, as they are about to sign huge contracts for a couple of different of these guys. They're going to need a lot of these younger players, these younger guys on cheaper contracts, to kind of step up and fill in the gaps that they need for the roles that they have on this team. So it's a big deal to hear kind of the consistent drumbeat from guys like Tolbert and Brooks and even Flournoy and again, I'll mention Cropper, because Cropper is another guy that kind of constantly is being another Jalen, right? So
Jalen Moreno Cropper. Yeah.
Jalen Moreno Cropper. Yeah. So it's another Jalen. So I really the Jalens are taking over practice, which is great. And I think it's a good sign for the depth on this wide receiver core, which, obviously is something that has been a concern that we've been worried about. I think we've been talking about how that wide receiver 3 position is going to shake out. We've been kind of penciling in Tolbert there, but if he got competition from Brooks and from Turpin and from some of these other guys that were coming in, Cropper, I think that's fantastic as well. Let's push that wide receiver 3. And at the very least, maybe you fill out a very nice wide receiver 4 and 5 group as you come out of training camp and feel very good about the depth in this class, this group, top to bottom.
All right, so just a couple of notes from the practice regarding the receivers. Jalen Tolbert worked with the first team exclusively. He caught a long pass from Trey Lance when Lance was kind of working in with the first team. He also caught the go-ahead touchdown, and however the Cowboys are classifying this, from Dak Prescott. It seemed like he was really involved in the action. And then there was Jalen Brooks, who I believe caught the 2-point conversion at the end of the game. He scored a touchdown at some point in their 7-on-7 drill. So these two receivers, it seems like the last couple of days of practice and from OTAs are both having really, really strong off seasons. Can they continue that into training camp and into the regular season. And if a breakout were to happen for one of these players, I think this is what it would look like, right? Like just a constant flow of positive information all off season long.
Yeah, this is something we've described a lot, right? This like breakouts don't happen when you have a guy who has one really great practice. It's
No.
consistently having very good practices and consistently being in the mix of guys that are showing out in practice. Those are the guys that that can do it day in and day out. They break out because that's what it takes in the NFL, right? Is in the regular season is that you need to be good every day, like not just one or two games. To even kind of get the opportunity to be good in one or two games, you have to be good every day. So,
And we've seen this happen over the last couple of years. I mean, even last year, like I think Jalen Randall Cropper is somebody who had, if I remember correctly, a really strong start
yeah,
to training
exactly.
camp, and then basically kind of faded out and then didn't make the active roster, was on the practice squad. We never heard of him again. Our guy Clarence Hill actually brought up John Vea Johnson today, who
Yeah,
was a name that we remember from the last couple of years, where would flash every practice or so, got to the preseason, and then just it never worked out. So for Brooks and for Tolbert to continue to break out, it has to be consistent. And so far, it seems like we're at least trending in that direction.
yeah. There's levels, right? It's like it's the consistency at OTAs, right? And then consistency at mini camps, and then consistency at training camp. And then once you've done the consistency at training camp thing, and you've been like a guy that we mention every day after practice, hey, this guy made another play today. This guy did a really good. The next step is take it to the preseason game, especially for these younger guys. I mean, some of the older guys may not get as many reps if we're talking about like a first round pick or second round pick.
Right.
They may only get a couple. But when we're talking about these kind of middle tier of the roster guys that are looking to break out or kind of make a move from outside of where they have been spotted in the roster, it takes consistency day to day in OTAs and training camp, and then you got to be able to take it to a game. You got to show us something in the preseason game, and then that's when you hopefully make the team. You kind of are given your opportunity in the regular season, and then we get to see does it actually translate. And each one of those is a level, and it could be, and you can say that because we've watched guys at different points in different seasons get caught at each one of these levels, right? Like we've seen guys that have had incredible OTAs, weren't ever able to make it to training camp that way. We've seen guys who've been able to get through two of them, but couldn't translate that to preseason success, which meant that they couldn't make it onto the roster the way they needed to. And then we've seen guys that have done all of it, make it to the regular season and just do nothing. So it's about consistency. It's about hearing their name in a positive manner over a period of time. And if you can have that consistency, then it's probably a pretty good chance that you're going to have consistency in the regular season as well.
All right, Lane, let's talk about some running back by committee news. Ezekiel Elliott spoke to the media yesterday. Let's talk about some of his comments next. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. And it's important to let that out, certainly to someone who is unbiased in your life. So today I want to tell you how I really feel about something. And I'm sure you're thinking the exact same thing this week. When are the NBA Finals going to start? Listen, people that are lifelong Mavs fans like I am, or at least over the last couple of weeks, are really getting anxious and ready for this finals to start. I don't know why we needed a 6-day break. It's felt like 6 weeks, but it's finally here. And I cannot wait to watch our Mavs against the Celtics tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. I feel better now. Therapy can be different for everybody. This is just a little form of therapy. Most of us have much bigger problems than having to wait 6 days to watch an NBA Finals game, but it's important to get things off of your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Just visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon. So Ezekiel Elliott spoke to the media yesterday, and basically the theme of his press conference availability was it's going to be a running back by committee. I have no idea what it looks like. I'm ready to help this team however I can, but we haven't really been told who's the starter, who's the lead back. Is that surprising to you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think I think the general probably thought process that they put out there was even when they were talking to Zeke was, hey, let's just get you in here. We've got a collection of these guys. A lot of these guys, and we're gonna see about how we can kind of cobble together a running back situation based on what we've got in the room. So I think it's pretty clear that they didn't give Zeke any kind of indication that he's going to be the sole starter. Which I don't know that would even have been an implication. He left here as a guy that was sharing the role, and he went to a place in New England where he was sharing the role, and so I think, and even he ended his press conference with a pretty heavy laugh that I'm used to sharing the load at this point. Like that's the role that I've been trained for at these last few years. So I think it's been pretty clear that it is going to be a running back by committee. And I also think that it's not unusual or weird that they don't have, the formula down yet, right? Like that we don't even know necessarily that this is the end of the collection of running backs, So
I would assume
think that
it's
they're
not, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that likely what they're going to do is get in there, just and start to kind of see how the thing looks with each running back. How does the running game look with each guy? And then they're going to kind of formulate an opinion on exactly how they're going to distribute those carries. And on top of that, I would say, I think it's likely to be more of a week affair, like
as it probably should be. There's going to be games where maybe Rico Dowdle is the better option, and maybe there's games where Ezekiel Elliott's the better option, and maybe there's a game where whatever running back you sign or trade for makes more sense because you need to have a little bit more speed. Do you think, though, again, we're sitting here today on June 6th, do you think that Rico Dowdle is the favorite to be the week 1 starter, or do you think it's still Ezekiel Elliott?
I think let's not talk about starters. Let's talk about who's going to get the most touches, right? Because I do think that Rico Dowdle likely will end up getting the most touches of these running backs, right? I think the starter label is something that will be manipulated to handle egos and, all kinds of different other stuff. But I think ultimately the answer that I'm looking for is who's going to be the guy that is getting the primary touches, the largest amount of touches in this offense. And I do think that it is Rico at this point, simply because, or at least that would be the plan. We'll see how that all plays out. Right. And so I think it just makes sense. He's kind of earned that role with his play these last few years. I think he's probably, right now he's probably the most explosive back you've got. Outside of this, we haven't seen this rookie kid at all. And on top of that, he, frankly, if you were going to choose one of these backs to be the kind of sole back, like if
somebody was going to emerge, you would like it to be Rico, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that he's the one that's probably the most physically qualified for the role right now, right? His issue has always been with me staying healthy. It's not a talent issue or anything else. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's good, so I think that, getting him a lot of chances and whether it's splitting carries with Zeke or a 3-way split between him and a fullback of unknown origin. I think all those things are very good choices. But I do think that it's going to be one of those situations where, they may have an idea like overall how many touches they'd like Zeke to have in a season. Like, okay, we'd like to keep it at X amount of touches per season, right? And not get him anymore. But I don't know that they're going to be like fully committing to, hey, okay, the standard is that Rico gets 75% of our touches and Zeke gets 25% of our touches, and that's how it's going to be every single game. I think it's a general thought process of these are our collection of backs. The formula, the mixture of how often they'll touch will be based on the opponent that week.
Yeah. I I would assume that we open week 1 and it's Rico that's playing, probably getting the most carries, like,
Yeah,
in a neutral situation,
I
like
would
1st
agree.
and 2nd down. But then I keep coming back to, like, if they're starting Tyler Guyton at left tackle, which we all assume, and let's say they're starting Cooper Beebe at center against the Cleveland Browns, I've got a feeling they're gonna default to having Zeke on the field because he's probably the best pass blocker of the group, right? So that's what makes things really confusing for me. And then we should mention Deuce Vaughn. We're going to talk about Dak Prescott here in a little bit, but Dak Prescott continues to speak really highly about Deuce Vaughn. We've heard
Yeah.
some more reports about him being used in the slot just so he has a different role, so he can be more active on game day. I mean, would it surprise you, Landon, if we have games this season where we see like 4 different running backs get a touch on offense?
No, I mean, honestly, I think we've discussed this before, but I have zero idea what to do with Deuce Vaughn right now. Right? Like he
I have
could
no
be
idea.
off the team and I wouldn't be shocked. He could be the number 1 touch running back on this team and I wouldn't be shocked. Like that's how far the wide of outcomes, the spectrum of outcomes are with him, I think, right now. Because I do think he has talent. Like you go back and watch what he did in college. And I even pointed out, I think I sent you in a DM a couple weeks ago that he ran a 4.5 or something 40, but I saw a team that does GPS tracking. It was
Mhm.
an analytics group that had him running 21 miles an hour
No.
on that run versus
Is it
was it Oklahoma
Alabama?
State? I think it was Oklahoma State in
Almost it.
that
Okay.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, so I think that there's still that athleticism there. The issue has been, what happens when he's tackled behind the line of scrimmage or he gets contact behind the line of scrimmage? Is he going to be able to make it back to the line of scrimmage? And that happened a lot to him, to the point where it really kind of colored our opinion on whether he was able to do this or not. I think if the Cowboys are able to get a little bit of better run blocking up front to kind of give him at least the opportunity to make it to the line of scrimmage. And on
Yeah.
top of that, I do like the idea of putting him in the slot a little bit more, just because, again, any opportunity to get this guy the ball in space is good,
It's
right?
good for your
So
offense. Yes.
yeah, so I think it's, we haven't talked a lot about Deuce Vaughn, and that is obviously our issue, but I think a lot of that has to do with, I honest to God don't know where to put his skill set at this point. I have to see him in training camp a little bit more to kind of determine exactly, has he gotten
Yeah.
stronger? Has he gotten faster? Is the problem that he's not strong enough and fast enough, or is it like that he's just not physically big enough to break an arm tackle from a defensive lineman who's made it past his blocker in the line of scrimmage?
And this is why I always hate everybody comparing every short running back to Darren Sproles, because Darren Sproles could break arm tackles. Now, he was never a great between the tackles runner, but he could do it at an average enough level to keep defenses honest, right? And he was 5'6", but jacked, right? Like
215
yeah.
pounds, I mean, he was all just
He was
jacked.
muscly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Deuce Vaughn's just not there. Maybe this offseason he improved his lower body strength, because I think that was the biggest issue for me, is that there was just too many times that a defender could get, their arm on his thigh and could bring him down. That
Yeah.
can't happen for
Yeah.
an NFL running back. So I agree with you. I have almost no expectations here, which is actually a good spot to be in, because if he gives you anything, it'll be a nice
Positive.
little surprise, right? But you're right. Like if he's cut and the Cowboys don't resign him to the practice squad, that wouldn't be a shock to me either. Or if he's somebody that gets 9 touches in week 1, wouldn't surprise me either way. So really,
That's what
really curious.
happens. That's what happens with these outlier players, right? Like
Yeah.
he's a true outlier. He's just, there aren't any other 5'5" guys that play running
Nope.
back in the NFL, and there's reasons for that. And there's also opportunities to exploit that, right? So
Yeah.
the Cowboys have got to find a way to exploit that a little bit better, and try to put him, keep him away from scenarios that, put him in a situation where he's got to juke a defensive tackle
I know.
behind the
I
line
know.
of scrimmage as soon as he gets the handoff. Like he's not Zeke, in that sense.
No.
Like
No.
that's where, that's the difference between him and Zeke. Zeke is that guy who can get back to the line of scrimmage almost no matter who's getting his arms on him, but maybe he's not as explosive as
Correct.
Vaughn. So that's kind of the picture of the running back, by committee overall, is you're combining these running backs with different skill sets.
Correct.
And hoping to kind of cobble together a very dynamic backfield. The question is that can Vaughn be useful enough on a down by down basis to even be deployed as a kind of change of pace back? That's kind of what we still need to see in Oxnard.
All right, let's talk about Dak Prescott, who spoke to the media yesterday. He had some very interesting comments about the offense, which we'll get to next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer that it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sporting events, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And get this, you can save even more when you choose a section and you let Gametime choose your exact seats. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Everydayers, we're going to be off on Friday, but we'll be right back on Monday to give you all the latest news surrounding your Dallas Cowboys. Later, let's talk about Dak Prescott, who spoke to the media on Thursday. He had some interesting thoughts about Jalen Moreno-Cropper, Deuce Vaughn, Jalen Brooks. He seems like he's very excited about some of the young players in this roster. But you actually pointed out another note that I want to discuss today about the offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we hadn't really considered, just because, there's been so much, and honestly, they did such a great job of downplaying the kind of change of offense last year, and that there was going to be a very smooth transition between the Kellen Moore offense to the Mike McCarthy offense. And, to their credit, they did very well. The offense was number one. So that's good. And that's something that's positive. So, but I think it was an interesting note that Dak brought up, that, at this point last year, they were kind of still learning what all this stuff meant, what some of the words meant and some of the phrasing, and it's still having to kind of translate from Kellen Moore's offense a little bit. They were doing a lot of the same similar things, but some of it was named differently, and then they were adding in more stuff, from the kind of McCarthy offense. So Dak mentioned several different times just the new familiarity with the offense, and having been in the second year in the offense, and he's not the only person either. I've heard other folks mentioning as well, just kind of being more confident, knowing where to be, and having it second nature. Dak compared it to being like in a 100 level class, and now being at like a 500 level class, like just being expert level, just basically practically graduate level. So. I think that's an important, step, and especially, considering the fact that they were able to get so much success the way they did, with a fairly new offense. How much does familiarity kind of help here? I'm hoping it helps a lot. And I think you add in the fact that, look, they lost Michael Gallup, but Gallup, I think, wasn't. I love Michael Gallup, but he was a very replaceable player last year, right? Yeah. You add in the fact that the Cowboys have a little bit more familiarity with the offense. I think that it's very possible that you get a slight to very big upgrade from Jalen Tolbert at that spot, right? Like coming in, if he is able to kind of take a step, and especially if you're able to kind of cobble that together with some good play from a guy like Jalen Brooks and Turpin, there's a chance that this offense is in a better situation than they were last year. And so I think that that's kind of what Dak is reacting to. He's feeling like he's more comfortable in what he's doing. He's probably feeling more comfortable in a lot of the receivers that are around him, including these young guys. So, I don't want to say that it was a good thing that CeeDee Lamb's not here. It isn't.
No.
But I think in the sense that you're getting an opportunity, even more opportunity, for these younger guys to kind of learn this offense while, working with Dak and understanding how Dak wants things. I think it just provides you more opportunity. Well, it provides those guys more opportunity to take that jump, to make themselves available to make the plays that are going to be required for them to get more opportunities, right? Because sometimes, you think about it, it's like this is competition for them. When we get into training camp, that's competition for their jobs. And if they aren't fully comfortable with what they're being asked to do, they're not going to be able to play as confident. So these younger guys getting the full opportunity to have these installs, to fully understand exactly what's being asked of them so that they can play, with that stuff as second nature, it's going to help them when it comes time to compete and make plays in order to show this coaching staff, hey, I belong. And not only do I belong, I deserve an opportunity to kind of, make some plays on the field during the regular season.
And it's great that Jalen Tolbert and Jake Ferguson and Jalen Brooks are all in year 2 of the system. But it really matters the most for Dak Prescott, because if Dak feels more comfortable and he feels like it's secondhand nature for him, that's just going to raise everybody else's ability, right? Because if he goes out there and he feels like he doesn't need to think, everything is just second nature to him, he's going to put players in good positions where they can make plays. So to me, that's the most important thing. If Dak is feeling more comfortable, I just feel more comfortable about the offense in general, regardless of who's out there.
Well, and I'll even point something out just to kind of peel the curtain on us tea leaf readers. The fact that Dak brought it up unprompted, I feel like is significant. Like the question wasn't, hey, how are you feeling in the second year of the McCarthy offense? The question was something else. And then unprompted, he brought up his comfort now that we're in the second year of the McCarthy offense. So to me, that means that, he's volunteering it, meaning it's real. Like he's actually does feel a difference between this year and last year. So if it's significant enough for him to kind of unprompted mention it, then I think it's something that should be brought up as a potential positive for this offense going into the next year.
I mean, I hate comparing anybody to Patrick Mahomes because he's the standard, right?
It's fair. It's unfair in a lot of ways.
It's unfair, but like you saw Patrick Mahomes, now he was in year 2 of Matt Nagy again, right? Because Matt Nagy was the offensive coordinator.
Nagy
early
part
2. Nagy part 2. He was able to go out there with less than stellar situations. Both of his tackles were atrocious. The wide receiver core was a mess. The tight ends, Travis Kelce was injured for most of the season. And still be able to find success because he just knew where everybody was going to be. He knew what the defense was going to do based on this formation and this personnel grouping and this alignment. I'm not saying that Dak is going to have that type of success and I also think the playmakers are just much better around Dak. But once you get to that level of, I feel very confident in anything that Mike McCarthy is going to call. It just raises your floor by quite a bit. That's all.
Yeah, and again, what you hope is that it makes him more comfortable in those situations where he's felt like he's had to press in the past.
Yes,
so
exactly.
That's what we're ultimately trying to find is solutions to that one problem that we need to fix, and that is this team not playing well when they are facing tough situations, specifically in the playoffs. So finding ways for them to feel more comfortable and not feel pressed, I think is a big thing for this team. And obviously it starts at the quarterback position for Dak Prescott.
All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Go check out the YouTube channel. We post videos every day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you right back here on Monday.